The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in orbit around the neutral world of Prime, a massive ring of metal and glass that could hold representatives from 10,000 worlds. Today, every seat was filled. Every eye, every sensor, every recording device was pointed at the single human standing in the center of the chamber. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man in his late 40s, with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes. He wore the formal black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, with the blue planet insignia on his chest. He had served humanity for 23 years in various positions across the galaxy. He had negotiated treaties, resolved conflicts, and built bridges between species that had been enemies for centuries. None of that mattered today. High Arbiter towered above him on the central platform. The leader of the council stood nearly 3 meters tall, his chitinous body gleaming under the bright lights. His compound eyes showed no emotion, but his voice carried clear contempt when he spoke. Ambassador Carter, you stand accused of violating Galactic Trade Regulation 774. Human vessels have been detected in the Outer Rim territories conducting unauthorized resource extraction. The evidence has been reviewed. The Council has reached its decision. Daniel Carter stepped forward slightly. High Arbiter, if I may present our response to these accusations. Waved one of his 4 arms dismissively. You may speak. Carter activated his personal display, projecting data into the air before the Council. The evidence presented against humanity was provided by the Dominion. Our intelligence services have traced the sensor logs and discovered they were altered. The timestamps do not match. The ship identification codes belong to vessels that were in Earth during the alleged incidents. We have submitted this analysis to the Council Review Board. The Review Board has examined your claims, replied. They find them unconvincing. Carter kept his voice steady. High Arbiter, we have provided detailed proof of tampering. The original files contain metadata that clearly shows manipulation. If the Council would simply allow an independent technical review. The Council has made its decision, interrupted. Humanity is guilty of the charges. Further argument is pointless. In the gallery above, Commander Lisa Grant gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. She was the military assigned to protect the ambassador, a decorated officer with 15 years of service. She had seen combat against pirates and hostile species. She had never felt as helpless as she did in this moment. The representatives of the Dominion sat in their section, their scaled faces showing clear satisfaction. They had worked for years to undermine humanity's position in galactic politics. Humans were newcomers to the Council, observers for only 80 years. They had grown too quickly, made too many friends, built too much influence. They had decided to remind the galaxy that humans were still a minor species, easily pushed aside. High Arbiter raised his arms for silence. The punishment for this violation is clear under galactic law. Humanity's diplomatic standing shall be reduced to provisional status. All human trade agreements shall be subject to Council review, and Ambassador Daniel Carter shall be publicly disciplined as a representative of his species. A murmur went through the chamber. Public discipline was an ancient ritual, rarely used in modern times. It was designed to humiliate, to break the spirit of the punished species and warn others against defiance. 2 Council guards approached Carter. They were massive creatures, each one capable of crushing a human with minimal effort. Carter did not resist as they took his arms and forced him to his knees. The gallery fell silent. Thousands of alien representatives watched as the human ambassador knelt on the cold floor of the Council chamber. Recording devices captured every angle, broadcasting the image across the galaxy. High Arbiter descended from his platform and stood before Carter. You will surrender your diplomatic insignia. Carter looked up at the towering alien. His face showed no fear, no anger, only a calm that seemed to unsettle the High Arbiter slightly. Without a word, Carter reached up and removed the blue planet insignia from his chest. He held it out, snatched it from his hand and held it up for the chamber to see. Then, with deliberate slowness, he crushed it in his grip. Fragments of metal fell to the floor around Carter's knees. "Let this serve as a reminder," announced. "The Galactic Council will not tolerate violations of its laws. Humanity has been disciplined. Let them remember their place." The delegation erupted in what passed for applause among their kind, a rhythmic stamping of their tails against the floor. Other species joined in, some out of genuine agreement, others out of fear of appearing sympathetic to the humans. Commander Grant felt tears of rage burning in her eyes. She wanted to draw her weapon, to fight her way down to the chamber floor and stand beside her ambassador, but she knew that would only make things worse. She could only watch. The guards released Carter and stepped back. For a long moment, the ambassador remained on his knees, his head bowed. The chamber waited for him to break, to beg, to show the weakness they expected from such a young species. Instead, Daniel Carter rose slowly to his feet. He straightened his uniform, brushed the dust from his knees, and looked directly at High Arbiter. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried clearly through the silent chamber. "Earth will remember this moment clearly." Then he turned and walked toward the exit, his steps steady and unhurried. The guards moved to escort him, but he did not acknowledge them. He walked like a man who had already moved beyond this place, beyond this insult, toward something the council could not yet see. Commander Grant met him at the gallery entrance. She fell into step beside him, saying nothing. There was nothing to say. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with conversation. They celebrated their victory. High Arbiter returned to his platform, satisfied that humanity had been properly humbled. None of them noticed the small device in Carter's pocket, which had transmitted every moment of the ceremony directly to Earth. In Geneva, in the United Earth Command Center, President Cole watched the broadcast end. Around him stood the senior leadership of human civilization: admirals, generals, intelligence directors, and cabinet members. They had watched in silence as their ambassador was forced to kneel. President Cole turned off the display. He looked at the faces around him, seeing the same cold anger in every eye. "Begin the final response protocol," he said quietly. "Show them exactly who they have chosen to insult." The room moved into action. Across human space, secure channels activated. Hidden installations received their orders. Ships that officially did not exist began powering up their engines. The galaxy thought they had witnessed humanity's humiliation. They had no idea they had just witnessed the beginning of humanity's answer. 48 hours after the humiliation of Ambassador Carter, the galaxy expected humanity to respond in one of two ways. They would either submit formal protests through diplomatic channels, accepting their reduced status while complaining about unfair treatment, or they would make empty threats, posturing and blustering before eventually backing down when faced with the Council's superior power. Humanity did neither. On the morning of the third day, every human embassy across the galaxy closed its doors simultaneously. Diplomatic staff boarded shuttles and departed without explanation. Trade representatives ended their negotiations mid-sentence and left. Human merchants packed their goods and vanished from alien markets overnight. Within 12 hours, there was not a single human representative anywhere in Council space. Director Amy Collins stood in the Intelligence Center deep beneath Geneva, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray-streaked hair, and she had spent 30 years building Earth's intelligence network into something no other species suspected existed. "They are calling it a cowardly retreat," one of her analysts reported. "Their media is celebrating humanity running away with its tail between its legs." Collins smiled slightly. "Let them celebrate. What about the others?" "They are concerned. They have requested information through back channels. The trade guilds are confused because they had profitable deals with human companies, and the council itself is uncertain how to interpret our silence. Good, uncertainty is useful. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of a ship that did not officially exist. The vessel was called Enduring Dawn, and it was the command ship of a fleet that the galaxy had never seen. Shaw was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, with a face that showed decades of service and eyes that missed nothing. "Status report," he ordered. His executive officer pulled up the tactical display. "All 17 fleet groups have reached their staging positions. We have full communication blackout across all human space. No transmissions in or out except through secure military channels." Shaw nodded, and the deep space installations. "Powered up and ready. The Council has no idea these facilities exist. They still think our shipyards are limited to the Sol system and our 3 colony worlds." For 50 years, humanity had played a careful game. They had shown the galaxy exactly what the galaxy expected to see: a young species with modest technology, limited military capability, and no real power. They had accepted minor insults, tolerated condescension, and smiled politely while older species treated them like children. Behind that mask, they had built something else entirely. Director Collins had constructed an intelligence network that reached into every major government in the galaxy. Human agents, carefully disguised, worked in positions that gave them access to secrets no outsider should know. Collins knew the personal weaknesses of every council leader. She knew the security codes for military installations. She knew things that would have started wars if they became public. Admiral Shaw had built a navy that existed only in classified files. Hidden shipyards in the outer reaches of human space had produced vessels using technology that the galaxy thought was still theoretical. While human merchant ships puttered along at standard speeds, Shaw's warships could cross the galaxy in days. President Cole had authorized all of it. He had understood, as previous leaders had understood, that humanity could not survive in a hostile galaxy through diplomacy alone. Respect required power, safety required strength, and strength meant nothing if your enemies did not know you had it. Until now, there had been no reason to reveal the truth. Humanity had grown slowly, carefully, making friends where they could and avoiding conflicts they could not win. The Council's decision to humiliate Ambassador Carter had changed everything. In her office, Director Collins received a secure transmission from one of her agents in space. She read it twice, then smiled coldly. "Get me the President," she said. 20 minutes later, she stood before Cole and Admiral Shaw in the Situation Room. "We have confirmed the source of the evidence," she reported. "The government authorized the operation directly. War Minister personally approved the sensor log manipulation. They wanted to weaken humanity's position before we could gain voting rights on the Council." President Cole's expression did not change. "They were afraid of us gaining influence." "Yes, sir, and they thought we were too weak to respond." Admiral Shaw leaned forward. "The fleet is ready. We can be in position across 17 sectors within 6 hours. The question is what message we want to send." Cole was silent for a long moment. He thought about Ambassador Carter, forced to kneel before the galaxy. He thought about the decades of careful work that had built humanity's hidden strength. He thought about the future his children and would inherit. "We do not want war," he said finally. "We want respect. There is a difference." "Understood, sir." "Show them enough to make them understand, not enough to make them desperate." Admiral Shaw nodded. "Surgical demonstration. Disable, not destroy. Make them see what we can do without making them feel they have nothing to lose." "Exactly." At the edge of human space, a scout ship was conducting routine patrol. The pilot was bored, expecting nothing unusual. Human space was quiet, as it always was. The weak species had retreated behind their borders, probably crying about their public humiliation. Then his sensors screamed warnings. Ships were appearing everywhere. Hundreds of signals, then thousands, emerging from seemingly empty space. The pilot's instruments could barely track them because they were moving at speeds that should have been impossible. He tried to send a transmission to his commanders, but something was jamming his communications. All he could do was watch as the impossible fleet assembled in perfect formation. Then a single message broadcast on all frequencies, cutting through the jamming with ease. It was automated, cold, and clear. Protocol initiated, 48 hours remain. The message repeated once, then fell silent. The pilot managed to restore partial communication and sent a panicked report to command. Within hours, the message had spread across the galaxy. Every species that had watched humanity's humiliation now heard those 5 words. Protocol initiated, 48 hours remain. No one knew what it meant. Everyone understood it was not a bluff. In the council chambers, High Arbiter received the reports with growing unease. He demanded explanations from his military advisors. They had none to give. The humans they thought they knew could not have built this fleet. The technology they were seeing should not exist. For the first time, wondered if forcing the human ambassador to kneel had been a mistake. 48 hours remained, and humanity was no longer silent. The Galactic Council had not held an emergency session in over 200 years. The last time had been during the Civil War, when an entire sector threatened to collapse into chaos. This session was called less than 6 hours after the human message broadcast across all frequencies. High Arbiter stood at his platform, trying to maintain his usual commanding presence. It was difficult. Reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy, each one more disturbing than the last. "We have confirmed in 17 different sectors," his military advisor reported. "Human vessels have appeared at strategic positions throughout Council space. Their numbers are impossible to estimate accurately because our sensors cannot track them properly." "Cannot track them," demanded, "explain." "Their ships move too fast, High Arbiter. Our tracking systems were designed for known drive technologies. These vessels are operating at speeds 3, perhaps 4 generations beyond anything we possess." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The Council species had spent developing faster-than-light travel. They were the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The idea that humans, a species that had only achieved space travel 3 centuries ago, could surpass them was unthinkable. And yet the evidence was undeniable. War Minister of the Dominion rose from his seat. He was a massive reptilian creature, covered in thick green scales, and he had built his career on military confidence. "This is clearly a deception," he declared. "The humans are using some kind of sensor trick to make us think they have more ships than they actually do. Their technology is inferior. Everyone knows this." "Then explain the readings," another representative challenged. "I do not need to explain tricks and illusions. I will prove they are false." Turned to address the full council. "I am ordering my border fleet to intercept these phantom vessels. When we capture or destroy them, you will see that humanity is still the weak species we have always known." High Arbiter hesitated. Something in his ancient instincts warned him that this was a mistake, but the council was watching, and he could not appear weak. "Proceed," he authorized. 3 hours later, the border fleet assembled at station. It was an impressive force, 400 warships, the finest vessels the Dominion possessed. War Minister commanded them personally from his flagship, surrounded by his most experienced officers. "Sensor contact," his tactical officer announced. "Human vessels approaching. Count is uncertain, at least 50 ships." Smiled, 50 against 400. They are either brave or stupid. All ships prepare to engage. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of weapons range, studied them on his display, noting their strange designs. They were sleek and angular, nothing like the bulky human merchant ships he had seen before. But 50 ships were still 50 ships. "Target the lead vessel," ordered. "All batteries fire." 400 warships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleets filled with energy beams and missiles, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ships moved, watched in disbelief as the enemy vessels simply slid aside from his attack. They did not dodge or weave like normal ships. They moved with a fluid grace that his sensors could barely follow, as if they existed slightly outside normal space. "How are they doing that?" he demanded. No one had an answer. On the bridge of Enduring Dawn, Admiral Shaw watched the barrage pass harmlessly through empty space. His ship's movement systems were so advanced that the enemy fire might as well have been standing still. "Demonstration phase," he ordered calmly. "Disable their weapons and engines. No casualties." His fleet responded instantly. 50 human ships accelerated into the heart of the formation, moving between enemy vessels like water flowing around stones. They fired as they moved, but their weapons were precisely calibrated. Each shot struck exactly where intended: power conduits, engine housings, weapon systems. Critical damage, but nothing that would kill. War Minister watched his tactical display turn red as ship after ship reported damage. His flagship shuddered as something struck the engine section. The lights flickered, then stabilized on emergency power. "Weapons offline," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "Engines at 12%. We cannot fight. We cannot run." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 400 warships drifted helplessly in space. Their weapons were destroyed. Their engines were crippled. Their shields had been bypassed as if they did not exist. Not a single crew member had died. Admiral Shaw opened a communication channel, broadcasting to the disabled fleet and to the council stations monitoring the engagement. "This is Admiral Shaw of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We have not fired a single lethal shot. Your crews are unharmed. Your ships can be repaired. This was a demonstration, not a war." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You have 36 hours to reconsider your council's decision. Use them wisely." The transmission ended. The human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the crippled vessels floating in silence. On Prime, High Arbiter received the reports in stunned disbelief. The entire border fleet disabled in 11 minutes without a single death. Technology that made Council weapons look like primitive tools. A military force that had been hidden for decades, waiting for this moment. "How?" he whispered. "How did we not know?" No one could answer him. The galaxy had spent 80 years treating humanity like a minor species, a young civilization barely worth noticing. They had dismissed human diplomats, ignored human concerns, and finally humiliated a human ambassador before the entire galaxy. Now they understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had simply chosen not to reveal their strength. They had watched, learned, and built something that no one had imagined possible. And they had done it all while smiling politely and accepting insults. High Arbiter looked at the countdown timer someone had placed on the main display. 36 hours remained. He began to understand that forcing Ambassador Carter to kneel might have been the greatest mistake in galactic history. The question now was whether 36 hours would be enough time to fix it. The council chambers had descended into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, demanding answers, casting blame, and trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. The careful political order that had governed the galaxy was cracking before their eyes. High Arbiter stood at his platform, watching his authority crumble. Private communications flooded his personal channels as various governments tried to distance themselves from the Council's decision. They had already sent formal apologies to Earth through back channels. The trade guilds were begging for reassurance that human markets would reopen. Even species that had applauded the humiliation of Ambassador Carter were now scrambling to pretend they had opposed it all along. The delegation sat in humiliated silence. War Minister had been recalled to face questioning about his catastrophic defeat. His political career was finished. The entire Dominion was in crisis. High Arbiter, an aide interrupted. A human vessel has entered prime space. The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to the main display as it showed a single diplomatic ship approaching the station. It was a small vessel, clearly designed for official functions rather than combat. But behind it, at a respectful distance, floated a fleet of warships that dwarfed anything the Council could field. "They are requesting permission to dock," the aide continued. "Had no choice, granted." The diplomatic vessel landed in the main hangar. Council security forces lined the arrival area, though everyone understood they were merely ceremonial. If humanity wanted to take the station by force, nothing could stop them. The ship's ramp lowered, and two figures emerged. Ambassador Daniel Carter walked with quiet confidence, wearing a new uniform with fresh insignia on his chest. The blue planet symbol gleamed under the hangar lights. Beside him walked Secretary General Myra, the senior diplomat of Earth's government. She was a tall woman with silver hair and a presence that commanded respect. Commander Lisa Grant followed behind them, leading a small security detail. She walked with her head high, unable to hide her satisfaction at this reversal of fortune. The delegation made its way to the council chambers, escorted by nervous alien officials. When they entered, every eye turned to watch them walk to the central floor, the same floor where Carter had been forced to kneel just days ago. Secretary General stepped forward and addressed the council. Her voice was calm and clear. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, we come not as conquerors, but as a species seeking the respect we have earned. 3 days ago, this body chose to humiliate humanity based on evidence. You forced our ambassador to kneel before the galaxy as a demonstration of your power over us." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Today, we offer you a choice. Not because we must, but because humanity believes in justice, not revenge. We have demonstrated our capability. We could demand far more than we are about to request. Remember that as you consider our terms." High Arbiter forced himself to speak. "What are your terms?" Activated a display, projecting her words for all to see. "First, a full public apology to humanity and to Ambassador Carter specifically, delivered by High Arbiter and broadcast across the galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but no one objected. "Second, complete restoration of Ambassador Carter's diplomatic honors, including a ceremony revering the humiliation he endured." Carter stood motionless, his expression neutral. "Third, a formal investigation into the evidence, with full cooperation from the Dominion. Those responsible will face justice under Council law." The representatives started to rise in protest, but continued without pausing. "Fourth, humanity will be granted permanent veto power on the Galactic Council, effective immediately. No decision affecting human interests will be made without our consent." This demand caused an uproar. Veto power was held only by the 5 founding species, civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. For a species as young as humanity to claim such authority was unprecedented. High Arbiter raised his arms for silence. "You ask too much. Veto power has never been granted to a species outside the Founders. The Council will never accept this." Secretary General met his gaze without flinching. "High Arbiter, 3 days ago, you forced our ambassador to kneel based on lies. You crushed his insignia and told the galaxy to remember humanity's place. You taught us that dignity in this galaxy must be defended with strength. She gestured toward the display showing the human fleet waiting outside the station. We learned the lesson well. We are not asking for veto power because we want to rule. We are asking because we will never allow ourselves to be humiliated again. Accept our terms or discover what else we have been building while you thought we were weak. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood the threat beneath her words. The fleet they could see was frightening enough. The implication that humanity had even more hidden capabilities was terrifying. Ambassador Carter stepped forward and spoke for the first time. I knelt on this floor because I believed in diplomacy, in patience, in finding peaceful solutions. I still believe in those things, but I also believe that peace without respect is just submission by another name. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had watched his humiliation with satisfaction. Humanity is offering you partnership, real partnership between equals. The alternative is a galaxy where you spend every day wondering what else we have hidden, what else we might do if you push us again. Choose wisely. High Arbiter looked at the faces around him. He saw fear, uncertainty, and the slow acceptance of a new reality. The galaxy had changed. The old order was ending. You mentioned evidence regarding the conspiracy, he said slowly. Present it. Secretary General smiled slightly. Director Collins. A transmission activated, and Director Amy Collins appeared on the main display. Behind her, screens showed intercepted communications, forged documents, and intelligence reports that laid bare the entire plot. Names, dates, authorization codes, everything needed to prove the conspiracy beyond doubt. The representative stared at the evidence, then slowly sank back into his seat. There was nothing he could say. Studied the evidence for a long moment, then turned to face the council. We will need time to consider these terms, he said quietly. Ambassador Carter shook his head. You have 12 hours, High Arbiter. Consider carefully. The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the council to face the consequences of their choices. 12 hours, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. High Arbiter looked at the countdown timer, then at the fleet waiting outside, then at the shattered remains of his authority. He already knew what the decision would be. The Galactic Council accepted humanity's terms with 3 hours remaining on the countdown. There had been debates, arguments, and desperate attempts to find alternative solutions. Some representatives had argued for resistance, for calling humanity's bluff, for refusing to surrender ancient privileges to a species so young. Those arguments died quickly. The evidence of human capability was too clear. The fleet waiting outside the station was too large. The fear of what else humanity might have hidden was too strong. In the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Only the Dominion opposed the terms, and their vote no longer mattered. Their representative had already been stripped of speaking privileges pending the investigation into their conspiracy. The ceremony took place in the same chamber where Ambassador Carter had been humiliated. The same recording devices that had broadcast his shame to the galaxy now captured something very different. High Arbiter descended from his platform and walked to the center of the chamber floor. He moved slowly, his usual arrogance replaced by something that almost resembled humility. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood waiting for him, flanked by Secretary General and Commander Lisa Grant. Ambassador Carter began, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity a formal apology for the injustice committed against you and your species. He paused, and for a moment Carter thought he might resist saying the rest, but continued. The accusations against humanity were false. The evidence was fabricated by those who feared your potential. In disciplining you publicly, the Council committed a grievous wrong. We ask for your forgiveness. Carter nodded slowly, The council's apology is accepted. Produced a small box from his robes. Inside lay a new insignia, identical to the one he had crushed days ago. The blue planet symbol, representing humanities and their place among the stars. Allow me to restore what was taken from you. Carter stood still as attached the insignia to his uniform. The ceremony was the exact reverse of the humiliation, designed to undo the shame before the galaxy's eyes. When it was complete, stepped back and bowed his head slightly. Humanity is recognized as a full partner in galactic affairs, he announced. All terms have been accepted. The chamber erupted in formal acknowledgement. Representatives from species across the galaxy signaled their acceptance of the new order. Some did so reluctantly, others with genuine respect. The delegation appeared almost relieved, as if a great tension had finally been released. Carter allowed himself a small smile. Then he stepped forward to address the council. 80 years ago, humanity came to the stars and found a galaxy already filled with ancient civilizations. We were young, we were inexperienced, we had much to learn, and so we listened. We watched. We tried to be good neighbors, even when we were not treated as equals. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had once looked down on his species. We built what we built not because we wanted war, but because we understood that in a dangerous universe, the weak do not survive. We hid our strength not to deceive you, but because we hoped we would never need to use it. We wanted to earn respect through our actions, not demand it through force. He gestured toward the section, now nearly empty. Some of you saw our patience as weakness. You thought you could push us without consequence. Today you have learned otherwise. But we take no joy in this lesson. We would have preferred partnership to confrontation. Carter straightened his new insignia. Humanity is not interested in conquest. We are not interested in revenge. We are interested in a galaxy where all species can work together, where disputes are settled fairly, where no one is forced to kneel based on lies. That is the future we want to build. We invite you to build it with us. He nodded once, then stepped back beside Secretary General. On Earth, President Cole watched the ceremony from the United Earth Command Center. Around him stood the same officials who had witnessed the humiliation days ago. Now they watched humanity's restoration with quiet pride. When the broadcast ended, Cole turned to face them. Today we showed the galaxy what humanity is capable of when we are united, but let us remember why we built our strength. Not for conquest, not for empire, for survival, for dignity, for the promise that our children will never be forced to kneel before anyone. Admiral Shaw stood among the officers. He had commanded the fleet that changed the galaxy's perception of humanity. Now he listened to his president with the same quiet attention he gave to every briefing. "Stand down the fleet," Cole ordered. "Return to standard operations, but maintain readiness. Peace must be defended and vigilance is the price of freedom." "Understood, sir," Shaw replied. The command center slowly returned to normal operations. The crisis was over. The new era was beginning. On Prime, Ambassador Carter stood at the observation deck of the Council station, looking out at the stars. The human fleet was departing, returning to the hidden bases and secret installations that had protected humanity for so long. Soon the galaxy would return to something like normal, though nothing would ever be quite the same. Commander Lisa Grant joined him at the window. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Being restored, I mean." Carter considered the question. "It feels like responsibility. The galaxy is watching us differently now. They are afraid of what we can do. It is up to us to show them what we choose to do." "And what is that?" "Be better than they expected. Build the partnerships we promised. Prove that strength and wisdom can exist together." He turned to face her. "The hard part is not showing power. The hard part is showing restraint." Grant nodded slowly. "Do you think they will ever truly accept us?" "Some will. Some will resent us forever. but they will respect us, and that is enough for now. Respect can grow into trust given time." She glanced at the insignia on his chest. "When you knelt in that chamber, what were you thinking?" Carter was quiet for a long moment. "I was thinking about my grandfather. He told me stories about Earth's history, about all the times humanity fought among ourselves over foolish things. He said the greatest achievement of his generation was not reaching the stars. It was learning to stop fighting each other long enough to try." He looked back at the stars. "When I knelt, I thought about how far we had come, and I knew that if our ancestors could stop their wars and unite as one species, then this humiliation was just another challenge to overcome. Humanity has faced worse. We always find a way." Grant smiled. "And now? Now we prove that we deserve the power we have revealed. Now we build the future we promised. Now we show the galaxy that humanity is not just strong, but worthy of the strength we possess." The stars gleamed beyond the observation window, countless worlds waiting to be explored, relationships waiting to be built, a future waiting to be written. Ambassador Daniel Carter, restored representative of united humanity, watched the galaxy spread out before him. They had come so far, they had so much further to go. But for the first time in 80 years, humanity would walk among the stars as equals. And they would never kneel again.